What if the thing meant to destroy you actually spreads your purpose further? What happens when pressure doesn't stop a movement but multiplies it? And could the hardest moment in your life become the turning point for something greater? After the death of Stephen, everything changed. What had once been a growing, unified community in one place suddenly faced intense pressure. The atmosphere shifted from momentum to fear, from gathering openly to moving cautiously. A wave of persecution began to rise. It wasn't isolated, it wasn't random, it was organized, focused, intentional. People who had once followed quietly now faced direct opposition. Homes were no longer places of safety, public spaces were no longer neutral. The message that had once spread freely was now seen as a threat. And at the center of this rising pressure was a man named Saul. He was determined, driven, convinced that what he was doing was right. He went from house to house, searching, pulling believers out, placing them into prison. There was no hesitation, no pause, just action. From a human perspective, this looked like the beginning of the end, a movement being crushed, a community being dismantled, a message being silenced. But something unexpected happened. Instead of disappearing, the believers scattered. They left Jerusalem. They moved into surrounding regions, different cities, different environments, different communities. At first glance, this scattering might seem like defeat, like retreat, like loss, but in reality it was something else entirely. Because wherever they went, they carried the message with them. They didn't leave their faith behind. They didn't become silent. They didn't blend in and forget who they were. They continued, speaking, sharing, living what they believed. And through that, the message spread further than it ever had before. What had been concentrated in one place was now moving outward, reaching new people, entering new spaces, creating new opportunities. This is the paradox of pressure. Sometimes the very thing that seems to limit us expands us. The very force that tries to contain us pushes us into new territory. And that is exactly what happened here. The scattering became the strategy, not planned, not expected, but effective. Because when people carry something meaningful, they don't lose it when they move. They multiply it. One of those who went out was Philip. He traveled to a city in Samaria, a place that was not always welcoming, a place with history, with tension, with distance from the original community. And yet he went. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He didn't question whether the environment was ideal. He simply responded. He began to speak, to share, to engage with the people there. And something powerful began to happen. The people listened, not casually, not with indifference, but with attention, with openness. Because they saw something different. They witnessed changes. They experienced impact. And through that, belief began to grow. Lives were being transformed. Situations were shifting. Hope was being restored. The city that once held uncertainty now held joy. That detail is important because it shows the outcome of movement. When something real enters a place, it changes the atmosphere. It brings light into spaces that once felt heavy. It creates possibility where there was none. And that transformation began not with comfort, but with displacement. Philip didn't go because it was easy. He went because circumstances pushed him. But instead of resisting that push, he embraced it. He allowed it to redirect him, to reposition him, to place him in a new environment where his impact could grow. This is a powerful lesson, because in life, we often resist change. We hold on to what is familiar, what is comfortable, what feels secure. But sometimes the shift we resist is the very thing that leads to growth, the new place, the new situation, the unexpected turn. It may not feel ideal, but it may be necessary. The early believers didn't choose persecution. They didn't seek difficulty, but when it came, they responded, not with surrender, but with movement, not with silence, but with action. And that response changed everything. This story challenges the way we see obstacles. We often view them as barriers, as signs to stop, as indicators that something is wrong. But sometimes they are invitations to move, to expand, to step into something new. The difference lies in how we respond. Do we shrink back, or do we step forward? Do we hold on to what we had, or do we carry it into where we are going? Because what we carry matters. The believers didn't carry fear. They carried faith. They carried truth. They carried a message that had already changed their lives. And that message did not depend on location. It did not depend on safety. It did not depend on approval. It moved with them, and wherever it went, it created impact. This also speaks to the idea of purpose. Purpose is not limited to one place. It is not tied to one role. It is not confined to one environment. It moves, it adapts, it expands. And when we understand that, we become more flexible, more open, more willing to follow where we are led. Philip didn't replicate what had been done before. He responded to where he was. He engaged with the people in front of him. He met them where they were. And that approach made a difference. Because connection happens when we are present, not when we are trying to recreate something from the past, but when we are fully engaged in the current moment. This story also highlights something about influence. The believers were scattered, separated, no longer gathered in one place. But their influence didn't decrease, it increased, because it was no longer centralized, it was distributed. And that distribution created reach, impact in multiple places, multiple communities, multiple lives. This is how growth often works. Not through concentration alone, but through expansion, through movement, through willingness to go where needed. And that requires courage. Because movement involves uncertainty. It involves stepping into the unknown. It involves letting go of what was familiar, but it also creates opportunity. Opportunity to grow, to learn, to make a difference in new ways. The early church didn't lose its identity when it was scattered. It revealed it. Because what they carried became visible in different environments. And that visibility created connection. It drew people in, it opened doors, it built bridges. And that is something we can apply today. Wherever we are, whatever situation we find ourselves in, we carry something, values, beliefs, perspectives, and those elements influence the spaces we enter. The question is, what are we carrying? Are we bringing something that adds value, that creates connection, that builds something meaningful? Because influence is not limited to position. It is expressed through presence, through action, through consistency. The story of the scattered believers reminds us that impact is not always planned. Sometimes it emerges from response, from the way we handle change, from the way we move through difficulty, from the way we choose to continue, even when conditions shift. And in that continuation, something powerful happens. Momentum builds, not in the way we expected, but in the way that works. The city of Samaria became a place of joy, not because everything was perfect, but because something real had entered, something that brought change, something that created hope. And that hope spread. Just like the message, just like the people. This is the ripple effect of faith in action. One movement leads to another. One response creates another opportunity. One decision opens a new path. And over time, those paths connect. They build something larger than any single moment. The early church did not stop when pressure came. It adapted, it moved, it expanded, and through that it grew. Not just in numbers, but in reach, in influence, in impact. This story invites us to reconsider how we see our own challenges. Are they obstacles or opportunities? Are they endings or beginnings? Are they limits or redirections? Because sometimes the moment that feels like loss is actually transition. The shift that feels uncomfortable is actually growth. The situation that feels uncertain is actually preparation. And when we begin to see it that way, our response changes. We become more open, more resilient, more willing to move forward. Because we understand that purpose is not confined, it is carried, it moves with us, and wherever we go, it has the potential to create something meaningful. The believers didn't know what would happen when they left. They didn't have a clear plan, but they had something more important. They had conviction. They had clarity. They had something worth sharing. And that was enough. It was enough to keep going, to keep speaking, to keep building. And through that, the message continued. Stronger, wider, deeper. Because what is real cannot be contained. It moves, it grows, it finds its way. And that is the power of living with purpose. Even in the middle of pressure, even in the face of uncertainty, even when everything seems to be shifting. Because sometimes the scattering is not the end. It is the beginning. Thank you for watching this video. If this message encouraged you, don't forget to like, follow the channel, and share this video with someone who needs hope and direction today.